So, Edley, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I am Edley ODowd of Scorpion Tea, formerly of Psychic TV, and sort of currently still with Toilet Bowls.
And how did this new solo project come about? What made you decide to do that first?
The solo project was an interesting thing because I was working with a record label initially who were encouraging me to do something solo before starting a new band, just kind of exploring all of this soundscape and sound making that I was doing with Genesis before they passed. Because Genesis and I did a lot of things outside of Psychic TV as just the two of us, where I would just create sound beds and Jen would do poetry, and like, what would it be like to explore that as a solo artist? So that kind of led me to this, sound making thing. And they put out, the label put out a cassette last year. It didn't get very much attention, so it's being reissued with an Italian label called Silentes, and coming out in February with kind of like a new face, like this was sort of the 0.1 release, and now this is the on steroids release with more music and more artwork and all that kind of stuff. And then my new band Scorpion Tea, which is primarily a rock band, is but also very experimental. Just finished recording their debut album for Give Take Records out of Minneapolis and LA. So those two things are happening in tandem, which is a lot, but it's it's super fun. I'm really excited, and the sort of post-pandemic creative flow has been really good for me.
Well, I've heard your album Forward, and I must say it's impressive.
Thank you.
Love listening to that. I mean, it's like this incredible sound experience, and I love that. I really do. It's just, there's not many bands do something like that, and it's just so, it's almost in its own way, it's unique, and I just loved experiencing all those sounds coming in. And there was some specific ones, Handcrafted Cliffs. Love that. The Morgue Wheel and Titmus. I just love those three so much. I mean, they are brilliant, but Handcrafted Cliffs, wow.
Handcrafted Cliffs is the newest one. So when they asked, the Silentes asked to do the reissue, they were like, can we make it a little bit longer? Because it was only 29 minutes as a cassette. So Titmus, Handcrafted Clips, and Damn Baby were brand new, created in December to rush to get the release out.
Yeah.
So I love that you like Handcrafted Clips, because it's one of the more clever ones.
It is. It's really good. Where do you get the names from for the tracks? I mean,
they're all stories. It all is like an inside joke that has to do with that particular track. I'm not going to go into what Handcrafted Clips means because it's so multifaceted, but it's basically like Handcrafted Clips is setting yourself up for disaster, essentially.
Yep. Disaster of your own making kind of thing.
Correct.
Yeah. Now I'm seeing it in the Handcrafted Cliffs. I actually see what you mean. Yes. But it's brilliant.
And then, interestingly, too, I'm working with a gentleman called Gore-Tech, who's an artist based out of Manchester, who does really intense drum and bass and experimental music. It's kind of like I have limited knowledge of music production, so I kind of just do it in a very painterly way. He does it, it's on steroids. It's like, boom, boom, boy, everything's so alive and intense.
Yep.
And we're doing a collab right now, which has been fascinating. Taking these two styles and just, you know what I mean? And so I'm excited to see what the results of that's going to be as well.
I do love some of these collaborations that people like yourself do, and it just comes out as two almost completely different styles knocked together, and wow, what can come out of some of those is phenomenal.
Yeah. And what's been coming out is just so incredible because we haven't even met. We haven't even met on screen. So we're just kind of listening to each other's music and kind of basing our musical responses based on what we think the other might like.
Wow. You know, it's uncanny you said that, because the last band I've interviewed, they've actually live 1,000 miles apart and they record their music separately. They've never been in the studio together. So they record it separate, send it to each other and add their bits in.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love it. That's so
great.
Fun, you know?
I mean, that's using technology to the max, isn't it? What you're doing and what they did. That's brilliant. If you can make that work, there's got to be some talent there to make that work. And it's got to be, you kind of understand what each other are about. Otherwise, that just wouldn't work. So you've obviously got a great knowledge of what each other want. Otherwise, that wouldn't go together well.
But in sort of the vaguest possible way. It's like all I really have to go on are images I see of him on the internet, interviews I've read, and music that I've listened to. And then our chit chat by email. But there's no, it's like, it's interesting. It's interesting because it's almost like you're kind of like creating with an avatar rather than an actual person. Because it's just based on this information that you collect about them, you know?
Yeah, it's like you've got an AI somewhere doing it.
And, you know, he even at one point he said, he goes, I think we've been body doubled because he's also in a rock band and a graphic designer and making experimental music. It's like we're living parallel lives in two different countries, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Maybe that helps. The similar interests kind of thing.
Yeah.
It must have something to do with that combination, but it's something to look forward to as well. Yeah,
so I don't know what we're going to do with those recordings, but I'm sure we'll figure something out, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And the Scorpion Tea, how did you get together on this? How did you guys get together?
Post-pandemic or during the pandemic, I was, again, because I was a frontline worker, brave, right? I'm like, I'm not going to stay in the house. I was jamming with different people, you know, rehearsal spaces, you know, keeping it safe, socially distanced, all that stuff. But a lot of people wouldn't even leave the house to do anything. And so a couple of friends and I, we'd spent good amounts of time writing music, but nothing really of any consequence. And so I just let it go. Figure something will reveal itself at some point. And I had been in a major transition because after Genesis passed, the pandemic, I kind of decided that I didn't want to live in New York City anymore. I was getting involved with somebody. We're getting married. So I sort of migrated out to the country, making it even harder to find people to play with. Yeah, and exactly. Who should I get a message from is one of my closest friends that I've known for quite a number of years, who lives between New York and Columbia. And he's like, yeah, I just finished this record. And I love his work and what he does. We've always wanted to collaborate. And he goes, I've written this record. I think it's so beautiful. And I'd really love for you to play drums on it. But, do you think you could make it to Columbia? So being the astute travel finder, I get myself a $400 round trip flight to Columbia. And I record this album. Gorgeous album. It will come out someday in the future. It may even be the next Scorpion Tea album. But while they're together and catching up and all of our craziness of the pandemic and seeing each other after several years, he's like, oh yeah, let me play you this music, and all of it was what I wanted to be doing. And I said, why have you kept this from me? Yeah. So he said, well, I'm going to be spending more time in the US and blah, blah, blah. And I have a singer we should work with. And my adopted son is a bass player, a very good one. And I've always wanted to do something with him. And I said, I'm going to get Fern to join the group too. And that's just kind of how it happened. Maybe 2 months after leaving Columbia, Chris was here. We booked a studio in LA, did maybe 3 weeks of rehearsals in New York, and then went right out and recorded.
Wow. That's brilliant. And you said the style is rock?
It's rock, but it's it's in, how explaining, like, I've played with Toilet Boys, I've played with Psychic TV, I've also played with a group called Kylesa, like a doom sludge metal band from Georgia. Double drummer, fantastic, but all of those influences together, I kind of wanted to make into something new. And so Scorpion T is primarily a rock band, but it also has great experimental leanings. And what's really bubbled to the surface is something called like death rock, right?
Yeah.
That I never really played or like knew much about or whatever. Groups like Christian Death and this sort of thing, like, just always kind of went over my head. And so really engaging with these ideas. And the engineer and co-producer, Thomas, who's he's the keyboard player from the OCs.
Okay.
So he gets pushing that, like, pushing things till they're peaking, pushing things till they're, so he's wonderful. And like together we have created this thing that's very unusual and compelling, but steeped in rock. And like the overarching thing that I always say about it is, to me, we're a band of monsters playing broken instruments.
Yes, I did read that.
That's what this record sounds like.
Yeah, I did read that quote. Yeah. But it sounds really intriguing, and it's quite exciting because just that combination of music itself, kind of looking forward to hearing how this sounds, because I do think it's going to be a little bit unique, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and we're all from such different, Colombia, Puerto Rico, Ecuador, Eastern Europe. It's like all these different things, coming together. And so, plus the age differences, I'm the oldest one in the group, so my leanings are much different from theirs. And they'll teach me things like, I didn't know anything about, I'm forgetting his name now, but the guy from, it's on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me later, but he's a Latin artist. At the Drive-In was the original group. And then they, it's there. I just can't think of it. But he's somebody that I've come to engage with where I'm like, the music is fantastic, and so we're implementing these other influences as well. So it's new. It's even new for me.
Wow.
That's just kind of wonderful.
Yeah, because it makes it more exciting for you if you're performing music that is new to you as well, because I'm sure that keeps the, how do you say it? The enthusiasm up, because it's something fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the production has this quality of, like, the outboard effects. They use this thing called an H910 that it's like, that's all I want to hear now is how an H910 sounds, because the processing, it's almost like, it's like the record is going to like go flipping off the turntable because it's jumping. It's buzzing with energy. Kind of has like a flutter to it. It's an old effect. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few bands saying they like working with older equipment because for various reasons. I mean, one told me that nowadays everything's done by computer, but he loved the smell of the heating up of the synthesizers and things, and he said that's what inspires me, that smell that comes out of them. So it's all various ways of working, and it's surprising what people like using and how good music sometimes does come through the older stuff, not older equipment, not the modern stuff.
Yeah.
I think
we went in with a solid 12 songs, and it's like, but we didn't have a sort of production vision, and just what ended up resulting was beyond what we could have expected,
Which is fantastic, isn't it? It's an achievement that way.
It's a headphone experience. It's like, just lay down and let it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Just thoroughly enjoy it. Is your solo, is this just the one-off, or will there be more of that as well?
I think now that it's up and running, there will be more, because I'm compelled to do it. And like, even with that collab, with Gore-Tex, it's like, I think I'm working, I do so much stuff that like when Saturday comes, maybe I just want to veg out and just stare at the wall or whatever. I'm finding myself being compelled. Last Saturday, I was running around my yard, microphoning my chickens and my dog and stuff like that, and turning them into compositions. It's like, I think this is going to be something that my heartstrings are attached to. So I'll have to keep doing it as an artist. I won't be able to stop.
I was going to ask you, I was going to say, how do you go about creating something like what you've done? And you kind of explained it there. It's because it's not like other music where they write the lyrics, they quickly write, or not quickly, but they write the music. You're using sounds, and that's got to be a lot harder, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think my process is I generally start with one thing and work from there. Right. So there's some sort of nugget of inspiration that I can latch onto, and then expand on it from there. So a lot of the sounds are environmental. I'll just walk around with, different microphones and record different stuff. Some of it, happens through processing where like I'll take a sound and then manipulate it so much that it becomes something else. Yeah. And that becomes the primary sound. Some of the sounds in the recordings are stems from old recordings. Like maybe I have like a stem from a keyboard track or something, and I'll change the pitch, flip it, chop it up, do all sorts, and then feed it back in. So you have those sounds, and then you have brand new ones that are environmental, the chickens, and I live near a river, so there's a big bridge, and there's lots of great sounds that happen there. So it's a mixture, it's a hybrid of all sorts. Well,
it's good because I don't think people really take much notice, but when you listen to music and you can relax, or it can change your whole mood.
Yeah.
And people don't always think about what they're saying. They say, "Oh, I love going and sitting by a stream and hearing the water." It's a kind of nature's music.
Yeah.
So if you're going out there with microphones, and we all know microphones, they all sound different. Yeah. They all record differently. And I can imagine that there's such an unlimited amount of sounds out there. And then once manipulated, they're an unlimited amount as well. Yeah. So, yeah. But you've got to...
Learning the technology for me has been the thing that's kind of made all that possible. Because, GarageBand, things like that they're intuitive. You can pretty much figure out how to do something. Yeah. But when you get into the broader programs, the larger things, it's like, okay, then there's a lot more choices, a lot more ways to do things. And so it can be super intimidating, but the pandemic really kind of solved that for me because there was nothing but time.
That's right.
So it's like, well, I don't know how to do this, so why don't I look at some YouTube videos and figure out how to do it myself?
Yeah. Wow. And that's the final product was what you've now created.
Forward. And it's interesting because it's like, this is just the beginning, right? This is my introduction into using software. So if people are digging it this much, I can't wait till a year from now when I'm even better.
Exactly. I mean, it already sounds brilliant. So
thank you.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah, I think it's definitely got a way forward, and hopefully more people are open to hearing that.
Yeah,
that
I
kind
think
of
just
style.
Getting it to them is the issue. It's hard to, it seems that I'm kind of in part of this noise scene or whatever. These tape labels and all, this stuff. It's all very small, very interesting, but it's not very broad. So, I love that it's being listened to in these circles, but I'm wondering of how to get it out, into another demographic,
I suppose what previously around our age group, we would have had bands like Test Department and Isaac Benton Newbarton using things in a scrapyard, basically, to make music. It was literally, it's the same concept, isn't it? It's using what's around you. to make those sounds. So they did well in those days. I mean, let's hope there's more people out there that can open their ears as such and listen and appreciate it.
So it's a lot like with Neubauten, it was a live vehicle for this music, and I think as a solo artist, I haven't figured out what my vehicle is yet. Like I've done a few gigs solo in the last year, supporting the cassette version of Forward, and it was good. I enjoyed it, but it's different and it's not streamlined for me yet. So
no, I was going to ask, have you done, or even can you do live? But
I did it with live sort of acoustic percussion instruments and like backdrops of sound on the computer. And then all of the, like with Forward, I did, for the cassette, I did a teaser for each song, a video teaser. That was just sort of hypnotic videos that I created, filming stuff in Colombia and Mexico and that kind of thing. Forgot what I was talking about.
I do that as well. About the live.
Yes. I mean, Neubauten being like a live vehicle. By the time Neubauten got to America, the excitement over how they create their music was so big. And these days with everybody, there's so many more musicians, so much more music, so much more stuff happening. It's like, how do you get noticed? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that is. You've got to.
My thing would be, I'd love to see one of these tracks end up on a Netflix series. You know what I mean? Something like that, where I think it could actually be of aid to a visual,
I think so. Because, I mean, the sounds are all there. So it kind of sets a scene. So the right scene with one of your tracks should work really well to set the scene even more. Because it does activate the brain to thinking. I mean, even if you don't see the names of the tracks, just listen and they will take you off in some journey somewhere. Yeah. So I think that would be a great idea, especially like you said, Netflix, who do these like Stranger Things and stuff like that. That would be brilliant. Yeah. It'd be brilliant.
And I think, some of the sort of, like you're talking about, sitting by a stream and or just, like enjoying the environmental sounds. I think, for Forward, part of it was also me creating sounds in response to like some severe depression that I had experienced over the course of 5 years, where I would sort of go into this catatonic state of like not being able to feel anything physically, not being able to feel anything emotionally, and just feeling so empty that it was things like sounds that really kind of reeled me back in. And over time, it was yoga, of using my body and moving, and being more balanced in my mind as well. But the idea, behind Forward also is to create this thing that's sort of like, I don't know, that you can just kind of like a pool you can get into, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm having a bad day. Let me go into my pool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you immerse yourself in the music. You immerse yourself in that sound, and that's it's a great way of relaxing as well.
Yeah. I experimented a lot with 528 megahertz. I didn't use it in the cassette or the CD, but 528 megahertz sound to relax, to sleep. Right. Because for the longest time, I couldn't sleep either.
No, I suffer that all the time. It's really bad at times. Sometimes it's like, please let me sleep. No.
What happens is it eventually, like if you continue, the body will it'll turn into psychosis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what happened, in my case, was it became like where I was not in reality.
That's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. So this, when I listen to Forward, I go back to that place. It's like almost like a salvation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what music is for, isn't it? It's for helping us along.
Yeah.
So what inspired you into music?
Oh my goodness. I did an interview last week where they were like, what got you turned on in the first place? It's like, oh, really? We're going to ask that. Okay.
Sorry.
I was 8 years old and I was sitting with my grandmother on the living room couch, and there was an advertisement for what's called a K-Tel record.
Yes, I remember that.
All right. So K-Tel records back in the day, all the hits, the new artists, right?
Yeah.
Like, and this person, and this person, and Kiss. And it was a flash of an image, rock and roll all night, like 3 seconds worth of it. And I'm sitting with my grandmother and I just went, I want that. I didn't even know what it was, Wow. But it was a band of monsters playing rock music, right? And to my 8-year-old mind, that was the ticket. So
Brilliant.
that's really the beginning, the absolute beginning.
Brilliant. And what music were you listening to?
At 8, it Kiss, Cheap Trick, Led Zeppelin, like it all just built from there. And it was like rock up until 15 years old, then discovered punk and post-punk.
Yeah.
And it was just headlong into it from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
But I still consider groups like Black Elk, Arkansas and things like that as influential to the experimental music,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all those old bands, they've all had they've made their mark somewhere on the line that has influenced something coming forward. I mean, how many times do you listen to some music nowadays and you think, that reminds me of, and you go back 40 years to something that you heard back then, and that is in their track, in their song, and you think, been done. Yeah. It's not new.
Yeah.
And that's surprising how many times that happens when you're listening to music, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and it's interesting too, because, the phrase and even the group that named themselves after it, pop will eat itself.
Yes.
That's just, and at our age, it's amazing just to sit back and watch the history of how it has regenerated and regurgitated. And you know what I mean? Yeah. It could be super annoying sometimes because you're just like, that's not, that's not authentic. That's not legit. Yeah. But then who are we to say? Because it's a brand new interpretation of something old.
Yes. And I've even heard songs where I've said to the artists themselves, oh, that sound, was that influenced by so-and-so? Who? They've never heard of them. But somewhere on the line, they must have heard something similar or heard it without knowing who they were,
or heard it when they were, from their parents in their infancy, and it just registered.
Yeah, yeah, and they've not taken any notice of it, but then it's come out in their own music, and it's and sometimes they say, "Can you send us a link?" Because they want to hear it, they want to know where they got it from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Anything else you'd like to mention about that I haven't mentioned? Because often I do forget something.
Oh, no. Scorpion Tea, like I said, final mixes. We're going into mastering now to the vinyl manufacturer from there. Album's expected to drop at Halloween, which I'm excited about because it makes sense.
Yeah. And Monsters playing rock. So,
right. Yeah. I'm sure Halloween was going to be very fun for us in the future. And then we're looking to sort of drop several singles before the album.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
So we're thinking, we're looking at May, June right now as first drop through the summer, and then album drop in October.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I really am.
Yeah, I'll get it to you as soon as I have masters.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Because it just, from how you've spoken about your music and your career in music, it's just, I just can't wait to hear something like that. It's just going to be it's going to be fresh and new. I love that.
Yeah. And it's always got to have that tickle spot,
Yeah.
For me, everything I work on has got to have that thing that kind of makes me go, like you hear that weird thing that now you can't unhear, or like some sort of detail like that,
Exactly. So it's just to ask this final bit. The your solo stuff, is some of that style put into Scorpion Tea?
It is, but in not in the same way. It's like if it does, it's very temporary.
Yeah.
Part of the music, it's not sort of the core of it.
No.
We actually did record one completely experimental track from scratch. That is not, it's not going to go on the album.
No.
And I'm trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because it's beyond Edley ODowd solo, but it's not quite Scorpion Tea.
I see. Yeah. So it's kind of an in between.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see, what that could,
Yeah.
unfold.
Maybe a limited edition crossover or something. That'd be good, though. Be good. Well,
is there anything
Edley,
else for me?
No, not at the moment. I'd love to do this again sometime nearer your release.
I would love that too. Yeah, this has been really great.
If you don't mind, anyway.
Yeah, as soon as we hang up, I'm going to tell Dan, let's do this again.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Edley. Thank you. I hope this was okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, Edley, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you for your time. It's been absolutely superb talking to you.
Same.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
And you too.
Bye-bye.